Welcome back. Malnourished horses seized in Cowley County back in the fall are recovering right now at two separate rescue facilities. Brady Bowman has more tonight on the investigation and how these caretakers bringing the horses back to health.
Sick and starving. That is how nearly 34 horses were found this past September in Cowley County. They were seized by the sheriff's office. For months, two rescue operations have been rehabilitating these animals, Hope in the Valley and Valley Center, and Blue Stem Equine in Atlanta. Those in care of the rescued horses say they are regaining their health.
You would never imagine you were looking at the same little babies.
Andy Armstrong is the founder of Hope in the Valley Equine Rescue and Sanctuary. She says these horses were rescued after someone saw their condition and made a call.
You got to do something. You got to call somebody. You have to do something. You can't just sit there and watch them die because they're literally starving to death, which is what was happening to a lot of these horses involved in this case.
While the Cowley County's Attorney's Office is still reviewing the case, Blue Stem believes these animals were used for fraud, adding that the owners were making people believe that they were running a rescue after obtaining these horses from a kill pen. Veterinarians scored the horses low on the Henneke Horse Body Condition scoring system when they were seized.
Every horse that we took in was assessed by a vet and was scoring a 1. And if there was lower, they probably would have been lower.
And these are the alive horses that we were able to take in. Several of the horses died over the course of the investigation due to starvation.
Many of these horses here are now doing much better since that seizure in September. And Armstrong tells me that Hope Valley has been in the operation of rescuing these horses for 20 years.
We are doing some really good adoptions and getting these horses into good homes with people who take care of them. And so our goal is to get all these guys into homes and them not ever have to worry about being hungry again and sick. And so she's a mess. You laid down in the mud.
In Valley Center, Brady Bowman, 12 News.
Blue Stem Equine says many of the horses were around 600 to 700 pounds when they should have been closer to 11 to 1,200 pounds. Blue Stem is holding a pool tournament in Arkansas City tomorrow morning at Terry's Place starting at 11 o'clock. Those funds will help Blue Stem with expenses to rehab at-risk horses and livestock.